Deacon had a tremendous agent in Zimbabwe, Sue. She was just a crack up, and they met me at the airport, and Sue's first words to me were, "Good heavens, you look like you're 12 years old, let's get you out of here." And I was like, what's in store now? And I landed the day after Mugabe's government had announced to combat inflation, they were printing more money, they were adding zeros. So people were literally burning money, and every car was being searched. Like, they were opening the boot, and everybody was like, they had all this useless money, and we went for coffee.
G'day and welcome to Global Horizons. I'm your host, Rob Malicki, coming today from Wurundjeri country on the Kulin Nation here in Melbourne. And I'm thrilled to be joined by a great old friend from international education, Linda Vaughn. Thanks for joining me on Global Horizons.
Thanks, Rob. Always good to see you. I wonder how many years it is between us we've been coming to these.
Many
I don't want to
years.
think so.
True story. You were the first person I ever presented at in a conference, at a conference.
Isana.
Was that Isana?
Isana, yeah.
Yeah, I remember that vividly.
You wandered out with a guitar, and I was like, what's he doing? We didn't rehearse this.
Was that one? I think the guitar was later. I did tell a story about backpacking across Europe and being stranded on a train station.
Yeah, you did.
That was hilarious. We had a lot of fun.
And I was like, he's got a guitar, but I've got an accent. So I tried to one-up you.
You're such a great storyteller. I always love catching up. And we met when you were working for Deacon back in the day in the learning of word space.
The daemon or the god of mobility that was Rosemary Livingston. And I learned so much from her. I mean, mobility wasn't in its infancy, but she was certainly just a force, a driving force for mobility, and such a champion. So it was a privilege. Yeah.
And Deacon was, still remains such an incredible learning abroad program. How did you end up there to begin with?
Oh, I think I've heard a lot of your guests say this, but by complete accident. Never design. So I wasn't long in Australia, actually. So I had graduated from university. I was working out what I wanted to do when I grew up. Still don't know. I had my first, real job post-graduation. I was working in youth education in the youth sector. So I was a youth worker in a pretty deprived area of Glasgow called Easterhouse. And I was working in a youth drop-in zone in the equivalent of a TAFE. So John Wheatley College, I believe it was called, and not far from one of the worst prisons in Scotland as well, I should say, Barlady. So a lot of the kids had a lot of issues, you can imagine. And that's not the reason I emigrated. I was living in Glasgow with an Australian I'd met in New York. What an international story this is. And we decided to come back to Australia. And I got some kind of part-time work doing Camp America, which was essentially after-school care. And I was then working part-time in the mornings for the company that ran the types of working holidays for young Australians, like go work in the ski fields in Canada. So Work USA, Work Canada, Work and Travel Britain, and also summer camps in America, which I had done for years while I was studying. And after a couple of years in there, the job at Deacon in the exchange office came up, and it seemed like a perfect match. I'd been running pre-departures for young Australians. I'd been, talking to them about cultural differences, about how travel expands the mind. And it just seemed like just a great time for me personally and professionally, and just really, really good synergies with what I had been doing. And I was lucky enough to get the role, yeah.
Was it Butex that you were working for?
Well, they were called, it was the equivalent of Camp America. So not Bunac, but the other one. Yeah, but similar, yeah.
Interesting. How did you end up in that sort of youth space to begin with? And sorry, this actually closes a loop for me because I didn't remember that backstory, but where you are now, and we'll probably get to that later.
Yeah, of course. So I think I've always had, whether I saw it or not, a non-linear journey that would always take me to education and young people, I think. So my father was a teacher. He went to university late in life. He left school at 16 and was an apprentice. So he went to university when I was a teenager, which was eye-opening because I got to roam the hallways of Stirling University, just loving it, and learned a lot from his journey as a mature student. So he taught, my aunt and uncle taught, my cousins are teachers. So there's been that synergy. I never wanted to be a teacher because, frankly, it's a really difficult job, and I've got nothing but respect and admiration for teachers. So when my dad left the teaching profession, he was an arts and development officer in the Highlands and Islands, and there's a large Gaelic speaking music and arts festival for young people called Fèis Roche that he ran at the time, and they needed volunteers. So of course you put the call up, and I was on holidays and I needed money. I got a paid gig looking after the young people, and that kind of set me on my path of always working with young people, in one way or another.
Do you think that was always going to be the path, or was there a moment when you were younger when there was maybe a branch that could have drawn you somewhere else?
Yeah, look, believe it or not, I wanted to work in television, but didn't everyone? But not front of camera, not behind it. I wanted to be a researcher for television, and I think this is just part of my neurodiversity perhaps. I'm really fixated on continuity errors and things that are not of the time period that the film or the... So I don't know if you know this, but there's a huge soap opera in the UK called EastEnders. And one time they had a massive, like, faux pas about timeline, and I was furious. And I was like, if I was a researcher on EastEnders, I would have gotten that teapot right. So I had this burning desire to work in research for television. I think it was just to correct people, but yeah, there you go.
That's awesome.
So that's EastEnders' loss as Australia's gain. Yeah.
The world would have been a very different place, wouldn't it? You end up in... isn't it fascinating? I just love the fact that the world is so broad that there is a job for that.
Yeah.
And there remains a job for that. You really can create something out of nothing. What do you miss from home?
Oh, prawn cocktail crisps. Greg's? No, family, of course, because I'm out here on my own, all the family are at home. I'm losing a sense of my Scottishness in some ways. So nearly 25 years in Australia, only lived in Scotland for 28. So there's going to be a really quite emotional milestone for me very soon. So I'm losing touch. I'll give you a fun example. When I first moved here, I'll say that I couldn't speak Australian. I didn't understand the connections. And in Melbourne, if you don't speak AFL, you're no one. And I was like, I don't know what a Bert Newton is. But now I go home and I have the same experience. I have no touchstones and no cultural references, like popular cultural references. I'm really out of the loop, and I feel that, yeah.
That's interesting, isn't it? So what was that AFL thing that you mentioned?
Well, if you don't speak AFL...
No, but what was the actual reference?
Oh, no, so I gave a pop culture one. I was like, I don't know what a Bert Newton is.
The Bert Newton.
Yeah, or Dermot Brereton. I think it was these people.
Yeah, okay.
I was like, what are you all talking about? And everyone spoke it, and especially working for Deakin in Geelong, the cats were like, woo. So
it's so hard, isn't it? I mean, that's also something you don't realise. My wife is French, of course, and we've been together for 20 years, so I start to become quite French literate, so to speak, but absolutely that entire cultural context of how she grew up, the singers, the films, the way society was, the prime ministers, is all kind of not there.
Yeah, so I feel... It's a weird feeling when I'm back home in Scotland because I both immediately feel at home but feel like a stranger at the same time concurrently. There's a concept that your landscape, your physical landscape shapes you. And I grew up in a very rugged, very kind of mountain-dominated kind of highland town. And I really miss that. One of my sisters lives in Iceland, so I visited her recently and it's very like Scotland. I love to go to Tasmania. It's the closest I get. But I was in the high country recently and I felt... something in me change and lift when I saw mountains. Yeah.
Can you paint that picture? Like if you close your eyes and you think of home, your home village.
Yeah.
Talk me through it. What does it look like?
It's lochs and glens and mountains, just mountains. It's at the base of the highest mountain in Britain. So it can be a little claustrophobic. They do feel like they're closing in on you, especially in bad weather days, which is every day. But there's a particular point, there's a road called the A82 between Glasgow and Fort William. Fort William's my hometown, which I reckon I could draw on my sleep. I feel like I should get it. It's tattooed on me. It's in my soul. And whenever I'm on that road, which is a lot, there's a certain bend in the road and a road sign, and you know there's a sweeping vista of Glencoe coming, and you just feel it in the fibre of your body.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can feel that, right?
Yeah.
That's a magical part of the world.
Yeah.
I cycled across Scotland when I was doing my exchange in the UK.
There you go.
And I just loved, you go, as you say, you go around this corner and you have this incredible vista of the loch, the water opening out, the mountains towering, and you're kind of going up along this loch, and suddenly you just hit, like, basically the roads kind of go along the lochs, and then this go over big bloody mountain blades.
So for me, if I close my eyes and think of home, it's not just visual, I can smell it. So I can smell like there's a certain scent of gorse on the mountains in spring. I can see the yellow of that. I can see the purple of the heather. I can see the mist. I can hear bird song as well, like curlews in the meadows on a summer evening. So yeah.
It's beautiful, isn't it? Are you a whiskey drinker?
To my father's father, no, but he's teaching me. So on a recent trip home, not the last one, my dad and I made a pilgrimage to Orkney because I'd never been.
Okay.
And we drank quite a lot of whiskey on the way up. So, yeah, I got more into it.
I was just thinking, because Oban's on that road from Glasgow through to...
Well, you branch off, to get to Oban, but it's... Oban, yeah.
Oh, shit, I've been calling it Oban my whole life.
Well, you made it sound like a president of the US. It's Oban.
What was Orkney like? I mean, that's also... that kind of, yeah.
I mean, it was blowing a hoolie, as we say in Scotland, so we could barely stand up. We were at the standing stones of Callanash, and there's a great picture of my dad who's almost just like this in the wind. But it's a fascinating place. They have like a midnight sun, and you got to be something to live on these islands in Scotland, and they're probably closer, to Norway, some of the islands, like the Shetlands. than they are to Scotland, yeah.
I'm fascinated by this, that the world is so broad and diverse, and you have these places where it's like people living outside of time.
They're ancient.
Ancient, and the freedom, right? Okay, they're never going to earn $100 million running a business on the Orkney Islands. But it also literally does not matter at all.
Nah, it doesn't. They're great communities as well. There's a great spirit. There's a great resilience, which I think is integral. There's a great streak in the Scots of we're very stoic, but we use humour a lot, which I think has served us well over the generations.
Where else have you been that was just completely batshit crazy different?
I've mentioned Iceland, and I'll say that for it. Iceland's great. My sister's lived there for a long time now. My father went there as a young man. She feels a strong connection. She works in the arts in Iceland as well. And I don't know, what I said about Iceland was when I was there is it reminds me of Scotland, but Iceland's still forming. So Scotland's fully formed, fingers crossed. So our volcanoes have happened, our ice age has come and gone. It's created the glens, the valleys, the mountains. Iceland's alive. The land is forming before your eyes. The lava is exploding and hardening, and the landscape is shifting. So it's such a progressive country, and I know a lot of people say that about countries, but Iceland's wild.
I've never seen a bad photo from Iceland. It's literally the number one on my bucket. No, I don't have bucket list, but my travel list is 100% Iceland at the top. Where is your sister?
She's in Reykjavik, obviously, but I was lucky enough. She was working for the Reykjavik Grapevine at the time. She's also a journalist. She's not anymore, but she managed to somehow, all four sisters were there together, which is very rare for us, and she managed to secure us a professional photographer from the Grapevine and a car, and we drove all over, and he took these professional shots of us, which amazing. So we now have these wonderful, like a photo shoot to go with our memories. So yeah, it was pretty neat.
That's sort of special, isn't it? It's like that sort of thing that you can't plan.
No.
And you look back and you're like, oh my God, this was us.
Yeah, and we're on we had done one of the coasts, which is famous for, glaciers, shipwrecks, black beaches. That's fascinating. Recently formed lava, and we were on the other coast, which is a bit more wild and a bit more remote, and there's one of those classic Icelandic churches, and of course we were just wandering about it, and there just happened to be a wedding. I mean, it was freezing cold, it was raining, it's Iceland, but it was kind of magical. We just kind of wandered into this amazing little church, and yeah, the poor bride was getting photographed. She was like
just thinking about sort of Scots folk and Australians. What do you see as sort of being some of the points of similarity and the points of difference? I feel like we get along well. The Australians and the Scots kind of get along pretty well, don't we?
Yeah, and that's fair. I've got a lot of friends here in Australia that I met at summer camp, because the Scots and the Australians naturally just converged at summer camp to be like, what are Americans? A little bit. But we quickly figured them out too. But yeah, real natural affinity, I think. And I think I'll say some really basic things that I think everyone will already know. I'm not going to give you any insight, but humour, definitely. I think that what they call the larrikin, we don't take ourselves too seriously. Sport's a great connector. I know people can dismiss sport, but it's such a wonderful connector. So I was ready-made for Melbourne because I'm a sports nut, so to be deposited here, I was like, dream come true. But the notion of a fair go, which is quite Australian, but I think Scotland has the same kind of attitude. It doesn't really matter. If you work hard and you lean in, we're going to give you a chance. We're going to let you see where you can go. And I think that's kind of nice as well. And Scotland, what a tiny nation. Geez, we get around. And so do Aussies. I meet Scots and Australians everywhere I go. Honest to God, I hear the accent a mile away. And I've been lucky enough through work to travel the world. And the Scots, for a tiny population, we get about. Also, innovation. Australians have invented some great stuff, and so have Scots. And I don't know what it is. There's some kind of synergy there, I think. Yeah.
Just sort of thinking about landscapes as well, because Scotland's a pretty wild place.
It can be quite bleak, and it's underpopulated, I guess.
Yeah, and Australia has that sort of flavour too. And once you're outside, of course, the big metropolitans and the like, but we have this space there. I wonder if that sort of breeds something in our mentality.
I think that's the resilience factor, isn't it? People work the land, they're self-sufficient, they get through the hard times.
Yeah. So after you were at Deakin, where did you go after that?
I went to Victorian government in the division that I now head up. So I went to international education for the school sector after Deakin. And I was in there for a couple of years, and then I just moved on to other opportunities within government. I was in higher education and skills. I was doing industry transformations. I was working through the shift in the automotive industry here in Victoria, closure of some of the coal-fired power stations down in the Latrobe Valley, Then I was working in employment programs for vulnerable and disadvantaged Victorians, then back into manufacturing and industry participation, then all the way back to the division where it started about 3 years ago now. I've been in the role. Yeah, so all back to international ed, which I had been out of for a number of years, but it's like coming home.
It is a great industry, isn't it? You must rock up to these sort of things and it's still a lot of the same faces floating around.
It's really nice though. It's like putting a pair of comfy slippers on.
I love the analogy. Yeah, no, I think it's also nice to come to something like this, and there's a lot of old faces, but then there's also an opportunity just to connect with so many new people. And I guess your role working with government, you interface with so many different stakeholders, so you must be constantly meeting new people as well.
Yeah. So I'm not long back from a quick trip to Vietnam and China, so met a lot of people on that trip, a number of whom are here who I've already seen. But yeah, government's a different type of role to university, I think. I didn't have as much connection to government and federal counterparts as I do now, so it's a bit of a privilege. And actually, speaking of that, I should put the disclaimer up the top that anything I discuss today, they're my own opinions, they're not the opinions of the Victorian government, and I'm doing this in a personal capacity. But you're right, and it's kind of wonderful though. It's a real privilege. There's a real respect out there, a mutual respect wherever I've been in the world, and feeling lucky enough to represent the Victorian government.
It's one of those things. I remember talking with the Vice Chancellor once, and we were talking about, he was a fantastic is a fantastic researcher, and had sort of ended up going into university management, and we were sort of having a beer together, and I said, but why did you end up in management? He said, well, if I can make the system 1% more efficient across thousands of people, then my impact goes well beyond the 100% capacity. I've always thought that's the sort of same thing with government, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's good to be in the tent. It's good to be at the table. And definitely, I'm incredibly lucky I have the school system. And I try and have a systematic approach, which I think serves you well. I think you have to have that kind of mindset. And, working within, the government of the day and its objectives, which, I think are commendable. The Minister was just here this morning. He's about to launch I think he has already launched the new education state. It opens a lot of opportunities. Yeah.
Where's the most exciting place you visited for work?
Oh, I was wondering if you're going to ask me this. I was going to go really exotic. In terms of exciting, maybe interesting or unusual, and again, just a tremendous privilege, but Pakistan, Zimbabwe, those types of countries that you wouldn't normally go to, and being invited into people's homes in those countries. So my agent took me to his home for a meal, and he had his mother there who lives with him in Pakistan and Karachi. So that's wild. You see beyond the hotel lobby and beyond the hotel staff. And Zimbabwe was the same. That was mind-blowing. Yeah.
When were these? Like what kind of year period are we talking here?
So probably maybe 2006.
Oh, yeah, wow. Okay.
A long time ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was Zimbabwe like? It's funny, I've read some books and stuff, but it's one of those places, you say the name and my brain kind of jumps to these images. I've seen on TV, obviously Robert Mugabe, number one. But outside of that, I don't really have a vision in my mind of what it's like to be there.
Me either. And Deacon had a tremendous agent in Zimbabwe, Sue. She was just a crack up, and they met me at the airport, and Sue's first words to me were, "Good heavens, you look like you're 12 years old. Let's get you out of here." And I was like, what's in store now? And I landed the day after Mugabe's government had announced to combat inflation, they were printing more money. They were adding zeros. So people were literally burning money, and every car was being searched. They were opening the boot, and everybody was they had all this useless money. We went for coffee, and my agent had two, the big stripy bags you get, and she had two of them and heft all of these banknotes out to pay for coffee. And I'd never experienced it. And we drove to my hotel, and I don't know if you know the movie The Lost Boys, but I wrote a paper on that in university on its mise en scene. She pointed to Harare in the distance, and she said to me, "That's as close as you get to Harare." So there's a scene in Lost Boys where the grandpa's in the car, and he starts it and he stops it and he goes, "That's as close to town as I like to get," and he gets out the car. So she was like, "That's as close as you get," and I was like, "What?" So I'd just been in Kenya, I'd been in Nairobi. I was like, I can do this. I couldn't. We were waiting to get into the hotel, obviously, gated heavily. And she was ringing the button. And this is just an example of where the white privilege in Zimbabwe still hadn't gone away. Eventually, they opened the gate and she went, "Where have you been? I've been ringing for minutes," to the staff. I was horrified. It was my first experience, and my only, because I'm white, privileged, of experiencing racism, and I reckon everyone should experience racism. Because I flew internally in Zimbabwe on Air Zimbabwe, and they wouldn't serve me, they wouldn't look at me, and the gentleman next to me had to say, "Excuse me, you forgot her meal," and the air hostess, I'm not joking, threw it at me. But they were dead set on not having anything to do with me. I was the only white person on the plane, and that everyone should have to experience that in their lives.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
Because so much we hear, and to some extent, like not only racism, but gender divide and all this sort of stuff. I think that's the thing that I struggle with. Like, I want to highlight the fact that we have this stupid fucking bias in our society, and we need to call it out so that the people, I see the bias. I don't experience it, but I can see it. So I kind of want the people who don't see it to maybe to understand a bit more.
Yeah, it's hard because then, I don't know, especially, with pronouns and non-binary folk, I feel like labeling people to combat diversity is almost counterintuitive.
I do agree with that too. It's a hard space, isn't it?
It really is.
When you want to...
There's nuance, definitely, and it's a fine line that we tread every day.
Yeah, you want to kind of counteract this negativity and these biases in the world. So you got to call it out.
Yeah.
Yeah, anyway, it's just an interesting
It's
thing, right?
It's a good thought, yeah.
So what about Pakistan then?
Fascinating. Loved it. Like, blew me away, like nowhere I'd ever been before. I'd been in the Middle East a fair bit. I'd been in, UAE, Qatar, Oman, but Pakistan was different again, and went to a couple of cities. So Karachi, Lahore, Islamabad. Islamabad is a wild ride because obviously we were staying in the diplomatic area, and it's the same person that designed Canberra. So it feels like you're in Canberra. The road signs are Australian. You go round and round in circles. And so it was weirdly familiar, but so foreign at the same time. So this is the Australian tentacles all over the world. Like the roads as you get closer to Islamabad, because we drove, the road signs become Australian. But you're in this amazing landscape that's not remotely like Australia.
When you say the road signs are Australian, what's
the big green with the white writing, the same font, everything. Yeah.
For reals?
Oh, for reals, yeah. Yeah.
Pakistan is definitely on my list. I'm obsessed with anything to do with K2, the mountain.
Yes. Oh, I was very lucky. We did an air safari through Pakistan Air and drove through the Himalayas. I drove through, and we got up in the cockpit and everything. Saw K2 very close up. Very close up.
Linda!
Yeah, great experience. Yeah, flew through. Mind-blowing.
Wow.
Yeah.
I don't know where I'm going to get there, but like doing that trek from Skardu all the way up through the valleys to K2 base camp is also very high on my...
Yeah, that valley, list. To see it from the plane, it was just like, it's beautiful.
Did you have a good day? Like good weather, clear?
Clear skies all round. This so close to those mountains, though. I was like, "Ooh, we go a bit higher," but no.
For those people listening, paint a picture what it's like when you look out the window of a small plane flying through the sky.
From the cockpit as well, because you never get that view. Certainly not now. I remember, I'm so old that I remember back in the day, people could get on planes and go, "My young child wants to see the pilot in the cockpit," and they'd be like, "Come on in." We haven't been able to do that for a number of years for obvious reasons, but when we got invited to the cockpit, I think there was only about 6 of us on the air safari, and to get that, I guess that 360 panoramic, that bird's eye. So the first thing I looked at was down. I looked at that valley. I looked at the snow lines. I looked at the river snaking its way. I looked at there's like dottings of dwellings. I thought, what would it be like to live here? Well, imagine this is your vista. And then I looked kind of like to my left and my right and saw these mountains. And again, I've spoken earlier about my connection to mountains, and yeah, it filled me with joy. It's incredible.
What an incredible experience.
Yeah.
Are you a good flyer?
Yeah. I'm getting worse as I get older.
Is that right?
I get emotional on planes. I read a lot about this. It's probably a combination of wine with dinner, but altitude makes you cry. So I get quite emotional, especially if I'm going to and from Scotland or even coming back to Australia from a long trip. I remember I was away for, I think, 3 weeks for a trip for Deacon, and I saw... really exposed myself as a big softie. I saw the tail of a Qantas plane. I saw the kangaroo and I burst into tears because I knew I was going home. Yeah.
That's really interesting. Have you ever had a moment on a plane where somebody's been like, there, dear,
yes.
everything's going to be okay?
A Qantas steward took very good care of me on a plane once. I stupidly, don't ask me why, but I watched a really upsetting film on a plane, My Sister's Keeper. It's a well-known book. It's about a sister. One has leukemia or cancer, and the other one is donating, I don't know, blood or bone marrow. Anyway, watch that in a ridiculous juxtaposition. Imagine this scene. I'm bawling my eyes out at the movie. The woman next to me is watching The Hangover. Like, she is dying with laughter, slapping the armrest. I am bawling to the point where the Qantas steward comes to me and goes, "Are you okay?" And I went, "This movie's really sad." And he went, "I know, here's another bottle of wine." So I was just like, don't watch sad movies on planes. They should be banned.
I love that. I had an experience sort of similar on a domestic flight earlier this year, and had just finished this book, American Dirt, which is really powerful and beautiful, and was sobbing. Like, "Are you okay, dear?"
They take very good care of you, I have to say.
We're so lucky to be able to travel. If you could get on a plane and go anywhere, like direct out of Melbourne, no stops, and not have to pay for it.
Oh gosh!
And let's say not go home, because obviously that would be number one. But where would you go? Like somewhere new or somewhere you've been?
You mean like for a holiday or like?
Yeah, just like for curiosity. And curiosity could be work, but just for curiosity.
Ironically, with moving to Australia, there's a whole lot of Europe I haven't done. I had Europe when I was at Deakin, but that was essentially Scandinavia and Germany. So I only recently went to Italy. Maybe 5 years ago, went to Rome. I went to Paris. I went to France. Paris for the first time maybe 7 years ago. So it's that whole continent to me. But Croatia, I'd love to go to Croatia. I hear it's beautiful, and I'd just like to go there because it's got, for me, an ideal mix of things for me to do. So it's got beaches, restaurants, but also art and history and culture. So it'd be a really good mix for me. Yeah.
It's dangerous once you open that can, isn't it? It's like you can't put things back in that jar. It's done.
You know, and all like there's a whole swatch of Italy and Spain I'd like to do.
Yeah.
Portugal. I'd love to go to Porto and Lisbon. Yeah. Portugal's like got it going on, man.
I think so. Like that's high on my curiosity list at the moment too. And you know where it came from me? We're in Paris, so my French, we obviously go back there for holidays a lot. And we had this cab driver that would often take us to the airport. He was kind of running his own family business. And he was from Portugal and would tell us about driving home to Portugal and what it was like when he arrived at the seaside, and talked about his little village. And I just remember his descriptions going into my body and me thinking, I've got to go there.
Yeah. I tell you what I want to do, which you'll appreciate. If money was no object, me and my best friend that I met at summer camp, he's Australian, he lives round the corner from me. We do sports bucket lists. So we went to a World Cup in Brazil. But if money was no object, I would take him and we would follow the Tour de France. We'd be in the caravan. I'd let him ride sections, not me. I'd be drinking wine and eating cheese. But that's my dream. I've seen the tour come in to Paris, and that was wild because I love the tour. I'll stay up for all hours in the freezing cold watching it. But it's not the same, like to follow it, to see some of the mountain finishes. That's my dream.
How do I not know this about you?
I have a fantasy Tour de France team. I win it most years because I do my research.
Linda!
The prize is a bottle of champagne.
This is why I am loving doing this podcast. We've known each other for 20 years. Have we never talked about cycling?
Love the tour. Love it.
Holy smokes. Wasn't Pogacar amazing?
Yeah, but
this year?
You worry about how clean the sport is when you see them do that.
You reckon? Actually, he made a comment about that, which I thought was really, and we're going down a rabbit hole here, but listeners, bear with us. It's interesting because he said, yeah, but people dominate all sports. Djokovic crushed everybody for a long time. Federer crushed everybody. So what's the difference?
It's extreme to be that much better than everyone else. Because Djokovic, he got pushed. He didn't win every Grand Slam with not dropping a set or not dropping a game.
Yeah.
And the rider that came second, months out from the tour, had a crash that nearly killed him.
Yeah.
How'd you get back on your bike and finish second on the Tour de France? I don't...
That's an extraordinary step. Just for clarity for listeners, we're not making any accusations. These are not allegations. No. Of course not.
So,
yeah.
It doesn't... I got to say, it doesn't ruin the spectacle for me. Because a man on a bike getting up the side of a mountain will always remain amazing to me.
A friend of mine and I did it in 2009. We went over there and we rode some of the stages. And to be honest, it's better to see on TV if you're watching the race. But the experience of that caravan coming past, and we did go and do a mountaintop finish, and we got there at 6 o'clock in the morning. We were the first people on the mountain, so we got this place on the finish line.
Did you do Scissor Devil, was that?
No, I didn't. No, but actually, true story, because we were cycling around, I had my cycling kit on, and I had the cycling kit of one of the professional teams, and we got there early in the morning, and they were still setting up. And so we literally wandered to the presentation area, to the podium, and there's like this guy, security guard, just kind of standing around. this French guy, and we were just like, hey, mate, do you mind if we get up on the podium and get a photo? And this guy was just like,
do whatever you want.
Go ahead. Yeah, do what you want. And so we climbed up and got photos on the podium. And, of course, like, completely, what do you say, like, prohibited.
Yeah, completely illegally. Yeah. Love it.
The organisers would have been horrified. And then later in the day, so we stayed and watched the whole stage. It took hours for the riders to arrive, like 10 hours for them to arrive. And then at the end, we went back and got our bikes. And I'm in my bike kit. And so the cameras kept kind of
following you.
Like, they kept going around saying, I get the right. Oh, no, it's just
a tourist.
Just a tourist. It's just a hack.
I should also say that image of a woman on a bike going up a mountain is equally amazing because the femme tour is also wild. Yeah.
Incredible. And, you know, going there, I'm so happy that finally these mega organisations are investing in it. Because the spectacle's incredible.
I don't know, the WNBA finals have just been on, and the story of New York Liberty who won, like they've come from the wilderness. And they've been brought back, you know, and playing to crowds now. Like, it's wonderful.
Yeah. So thinking about it, I mean, in the cycling space, like, women riders are also just like another level above everybody. It's unbelievable. So talented.
The thing that gives me faith in the sport and that it's clean is, you're right, watching it on television is better. But when you see them come over the mountain and finish, and when they just drop off their bikes, and it looks like their lungs are going to come out of their chest. Like, it's, yeah. And then they hop straight on a bike to recover.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
What else would be on your sporting bucket list? So Tour de France.
Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Or a superb owl, as they say it in What We Do in the Shadows, which has always cracked me up. I've never thought about it like that. I don't know if you know that TV show. It's about, you got to watch it. It's about vampires living in Staten Island, and they get invited to a Super Bowl party, but because they're from medieval times, they misread it as a superb owl.
Superb owl.
So they're like, where's the owl? They're like, where's the owl? Where's the superb owl? They don't know what the Super Bowl is, but definitely Super Bowl, NBA Finals or WNBA Final. I'm a big Boston fan, so I was really happy last year. My friend that I mentioned, he's seen the Bulls play. He was a Jordan fan. He's seen Jordan play. But, you know, I'd love to see Tatum and Brown play. Yeah.
Yeah, because there is that. I mean, that's something that you've got in the memory vault, right? So see Jordan play is incredible. Yeah, when I did my exchange program in London, I saw B.B. King play
there you go.
At the Hammersmith Apollo. That was something that will stay with me till the day I die.
Yeah.
Like,
when I was at Deakin and I was at NAFSA, I think it was in Seattle, and I saw Lauren Jackson play in the WNBA, and I was like, that's going to stay forever.
Yeah. Yeah, she's amazing. She retired now, though.
Yeah, she keeps retiring and coming back. She came back for the Olympics, but she's done now. Yeah, she's done for good. She was playing for Dandenong.
Yeah. Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Came back and played local. Good on her.
Yeah.
Who would have known that we were going to turn this into a sports podcast?
Me, probably. But see, it's such a connector. It's a universal language.
Yeah, this
sport and education, if I bring it back to education. They're universal languages. I mean, I don't know if you were there, but Minister Clare and the Indian Minister for Education, it is a language that we speak. It's about aspiration for our young people, and it's about building your nation and the competency of your nation. And education is at the cornerstone of that.
If you could wave a magic wand and fix an education problem in the world. Once again, not talking anything to do with work, Victorian government, the Europeans, but if you could wave a magic wand and fix an education problem, anywhere in the world, any problem, what would it be?
Universal free access to all levels of university. I was lucky enough, I'm a product of public high school, I'm a product of free university in the UK, and that's the key. Nobody should have to pay for education. That's ironic, I say that. If you have a choice, you can pay. I'll clarify, I'll caveat it. But I'm working class, you know, very, very working class. My stepdad worked in a factory. I took myself off to university, but everybody could go to university in Scotland at the time. And that opens everything.
I do worry for a country like America, for example, where it's now the polar opposite, isn't it? I mean, you've got families or parents that are saving for their kids' college before the child is even conceived.
The college fund.
It's just getting so prohibitively expensive, and of course I feel like that drives people away.
It's not far behind in Australia, so young people stay at home when they're at university. I didn't. There wasn't a university in my town. You know, you're having to work while you study. You've got this HECS debt now. It's like you're shackled to debt when you graduate, and you don't then have the freedom or the space to try things before you land on a career, potentially. People are maybe moving into areas of study that they think will guarantee them a graduate outcome that might not be an area they're passionate in. I don't know.
Yeah, it's tricky, isn't it? I recently read, because I was doing an episode for Choosing a Uni podcast about the whole HEX scheme and everything. So I was doing some reading on this recently, and the rationale for bringing in HEX contributions was because the ROI on a degree, particularly back then it was higher. I think it was maybe an undergraduate degree would gain you something like 65 or 70% more earnings across your lifetime. That's slipped, but it's still 53 or 54% across the lifetime. So the idea was like, well, you should pay some of that back to the system.
Yeah, but
some
then,
of your gain back to the system.
Ironically, you can do a lot of vet stuff for free or for a small subsidy, and then, I don't know, do you know how much a plumber makes?
Yeah.
What's the ROI? You know, if you've just paid a plumber recently, you'll know the pain. But that's where the money is in terms of a vocation or a job.
Yeah.
Fascinating if you did the ROI on vocational education too.
Yeah, and I guess if you pocketed those savings and just put them in your super fund.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, took the 50k HEX debt and 40k HEX debt and put that in a super fund when you're 20 years old, that's going to turn in, just from compounding, to a lot of money.
Yep.
When you're older. Yeah, it's interesting. It's a really philosophical kind of discussion.
Yeah,
that you need to.
Yeah, it is.
And I could never be a politician. I think it would be just so hard to balance different policy objectives. Linda, one of the things I asked you to do when we were preparing for this, and I ask all the guests to do it, is just to find a story for us to start on. And of course, we've known each other so long, we didn't even get to use it. Maybe let's go to the story that you probably were thinking of what you were going to tell when we first sat down.
Yeah. Well, I did think of it because I used it recently, well, maybe a couple of years ago, and I never thought I would, but again, it's around the same kind of thematic that we've been talking about foreignness and feeling strange. And anyway, long story short, I was in Kenya, and I decided I'd go and test the market in Mauritius. Lucky me. But in some, I don't know if you know the map of that region, but it's not far from Nairobi, but in some quirk, the only way to get there was to fly all the way to Johannesburg and then all the way back. And the flight from Nairobi to Joburg was in the late afternoon, and then my flight to Mauritius was delayed. So I spent about 5 hours in the airport in Joburg, and then I had to fly through the night to Mauritius, and I was collected from the plane, deposited in my hotel, which was full of honeymooners and me on my own. And my agent who'd picked me up said to me, I'll see you in 1 hour. And I said, an hour? No. Like, the student interviews are like 2 p.m. Look at me. And she was like, no, you're getting interviewed live on radio in an hour. And I said, am I? And she was like, yes. And I was like, I had no idea. She had forgotten, or she hadn't, or she had just arranged it. And at the time, it was one of those, we're always facing a storm of some sort. But stories had just broken, so this is years ago, about education agents being unscrupulous, about students living on the floors of kitchens, being like treated very poorly, slave labour, all that kind of connotation. So there was it was huge in Australia at the time, years ago. And she was like, yeah. So I quickly shower, change, we get to the radio station, we walk in, I meet the lovely presenter, and then I'm interviewed in French. What? Now, your lovely wife is French. I have no French. I have high school French. The entire interview was in French. And I was like, I looked at my agent and she was like, and she was sort of translating for me. Then I would speak and then the presenter would speak. And I was speaking in English as best I could to what I thought she was asking me. And I have no idea to this day what I actually said, because I had no control over what they were relaying back to the audience about what. I could hear my name and Deacon and some other words, and I was like, what is even... I was having an out-of-body experience. I was doing my level best. I was towing the line about education agents and accredited ones and how good they are and we trust them. And because I was with my agent and they were banaging me, and I was like, I don't know what's happening.
If you told me that in advance, we would have done this interview in French, Linda.
And my high school French is rotten, but the French and the Scots are very close as well, so I could make the noises because we can make the same gutturals and
the.
But I was like, what is happening?
Yeah.
Actually, funny story. When I was in Paris, I exchanged very rudimentary French with somebody. I was buying something, and she was speaking away to me in French, and I said, "Oh, I'm so sorry, I don't speak French." And she was like, "But you're French. It is so good." And I was like, "Oh." My French high school teacher would love to hear that because she was French, the poor thing, and lived in Fort William, and she called it Fort William French.
Fort William French.
So we would just butcher it when we wouldn't even attempt to do the accent. So we were in the sound labs going, "Je m'appelle Linda, and j'ai oublié mon crayon." And she'd be like, "Oh, you're Fort William French. It is killing me." So I always laugh. I always think, who knew that little girl in that sound lab, and 13-year-old Linda in Lochaber High School in Fort William butchering French, would be in Mauritius being interviewed live on radio purely in French.
What else would 13-year-old Linda be surprised at?
Oh, everything that she got out of Fort William or left Fort William, left Scotland. Like, when I went to New York to first do summer camp, that was only the second time I'd ever been on a plane, and I was 21. I'd flown to London a few months earlier to see Madonna play at Wembley. As you do. But that is the second time, and I flew to JFK. And I'm a big film nut. So, of course, I get off the plane, get on the bus. The bus takes you, into Queens, up over the bridge. And I first saw that skyline. All I think was Woody Allen, Scorsese. And I felt like I knew the city. And I was just like, this is unbelievable. A city you've seen on your television all your life. And then you're there, and the heat and the smell and the sounds.
Did you live in New York?
Never.
Never.
It stinks. Nah, it doesn't stink. Nah. I love New York. It's like my second favourite city after Melbourne. I love it. It is alive. It pulses with a beat that you can't capture anywhere else, but I don't think I could live there, no.
Why do you love Melbourne? Real question, not a Sydney-sider.
No. Because when I first moved here, Melbourne wasn't always the plan, but I never left. Because I fell in love with her. I always joke that I'm the poster child for Melbourne. And when Deacon would send me overseas, like, the students would be like, "You're not Australian." And I'll be, I know, but isn't that great? Because I know exactly what you're going through. And let me tell you how much I love my Melbourne. I don't know, her wide-sweeping boulevards, she felt European to me, a little European. The people, the vibe, the weather, everyone bags the Melbourne weather. I personally like seasons. They can all come in a day. I don't really mind, but I couldn't go anywhere warmer. As a Scot, I couldn't have lived in far north Queensland or even WA. She's exciting, dynamic, modern, everything I love about a city, accessible. As a sports nut, to know that I could go to the Australian Open and afford it. I've never been to Wimbledon. I could never afford to go to Wimbledon. I can afford to go to the Australian Open. I went to the Grand Prix. I was like, whoa, this is amazing. The other thing I love about Melbourne, you drive for an hour in any direction. You're out the city, you're in the country. You could be at the sea, you could be in a desert, you could be in the mountains. Yeah, she's great.
So far in this, you've said you're a sport nut, you're a movie nut, you're a travel nut. You said art. Where's the passion come from?
Escapism, I think. And, sport is drama. It's unscripted. It's better than any theatre show I've ever seen. But live theatre is, I think, a challenge for the audience too, and I find sport a challenge, but I think escapism, 100%. So art, definitely art, TV, movies, definitely escapism, but reading's my big love, my first love, and that's what I studied, actually. I studied literature. But you can lose yourself in a game of football for 4 hours, and you're just in that moment. And, interestingly, I don't find myself in the moment very often. I find myself now watching TV while I'm on my phone or doing something else or tidying up or making dinner, but you lose yourself in the moment if you're at live theatre or if you're in an art gallery or if you're at a sporting event. You are really committed to that moment and you're so present.
Just as you were saying that, what I felt was standing at Ben Nevis in that incredible landscape.
Yeah.
And you're in the moment there. You're lost in that environment. It's almost like the same thing. Sorry, I'm getting a bit emotional about that because that literally just came and struck me as being like in you, you know what I mean?
There's a visceral roar at the MCG, and I'm like, it hairs on your neck stuff. Whether it's seeing 100 in cricket in the Boxing Day Test, which I've seen, I saw Kohli get a century for India, I was like, brilliant. Whether it's, seeing your team lose a grand final, sadly for me, yes. And it's the same roar that I used to hear at Celtic Park. There's a sound in soccer, the near miss, it's like the... And there's a similar sound when someone gets a great tackle in you feel such a sense of belonging. It's tribal, but it's a sense of belonging you can't escape it, and it's wonderful and it's magical.
It's like that feeling of being such a small, like when you look up the night sky and it's this enormous, and you feel tiny, but you feel powerful and like you're connected to everything.
Or, interestingly, it's everyone feeling the same thing at the same time, which is rare.
Yeah, true.
So if I'm with St Kilda fans, because that's my team, we're all feeling the same thing, despair, usually. If I'm with Celtic fans, we're all feeling the same thing at the same time. Now, that you don't get that often.
Yeah, and you're like wired.
Yeah, and it's funny, you get emotional. I'll tell you what makes me emotional, not just movies on planes. Standing ovations at things, at theatre especially. I get really teary because that's a shared moment too. So I went to see the Portrait of Dorian Gray. Amazing production, like spine-tingling, and the standing ovation was so joyous and in awe. Everyone was just in awe of what they had just seen. It was a one-woman show, and I was just like, oh, imagine being her and being able to perform that, but being able to bring all of us in this crowd with her, and we wanted to give back to her. Yeah.
Linda, this has been such a privilege for me, and I'm so grateful that we've been able to take this time to sit down and have this conversation. I feel like we're just scratching the surface. We've opened, as I was saying earlier, we've opened a jar. So let's make sure we keep it.
Yeah, we'll do part 2.
Part 2, for sure. Thanks so much for joining me.
Not a
Global
problem.
Horizons. If you've enjoyed this episode of the Global Horizons podcast, consider subscribing to our newsletter. Search for Global Horizons podcast and then just pop in your email address, and that way you will never miss out on all of the critical international education news that you need to stay up to date with. This episode has been produced on Garigal land in Sydney. Our video and audio editor is Len Zamora, and I'm your host, Rob Malicki. Have an awesome day. See you in the next episode.